Hi everyone. Tonight we begin by stepping back to the autumn of 1683. The harvest is gathered, winter preparations complete, and across Europe, families settle in for what they expect to be another cold season. But something is different this year. The snow arrives in October, a month too early. And it doesn't melt. You watch the temperature drop, day after day, week after week, until the rivers themselves begin to freeze solid. It's the kind of winter that sounds dramatic when you read about it in history books. But if you had to actually live through it, you would understand within the first month that this wasn't just harsh weather. This was a climate catastrophe. The reality is stark. This was the coldest winter in 500 years. And if you faced it without central heating, without weather forecasts, without even the knowledge that it would ever end, you'd discover quickly that your biggest enemy wasn't invading armies or plague. It was the cold that refused to stop. An entire civilization nearly didn't survive this. Hundreds of thousands didn't. But somehow, against impossible odds, most did, and the methods they invented would change Europe forever. Before we step into that frozen world, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're genuinely curious about how humanity endures the unendurable. And if you're listening right now, post your location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing where in the world people are tuning in from, and I think you'll appreciate your modern heating a bit more after tonight. Now, dim the lights, let your breathing slow, and imagine yourself waking up on a November morning in 1683. You pull back your shutters expecting to see autumn rain. Instead, you see ice. The river outside your village, the one that's flowed freely for 1,000 years, has stopped moving. The surface is frozen solid. And somehow, you know in your bones, this is only the beginning. You trudge across the flagstone floor of your chamber and immediately you feel it. The cold doesn't just touch your skin. It radiates up from the stone beneath your feet like the earth itself wants you gone. These walls, these magnificent fortress walls that kept out armies and arrows, turn out to be your worst enemy when winter comes. 12 feet thick in some places. Solid stone from foundation to battlement. And every single inch of it is working against you right now. See, here's what the castle builders didn't tell you. Stone is basically a battery for cold. During the day, whatever weak sunlight manages to break through the clouds. The walls absorb it, sure. But then night falls and the temperature plummets, and that stone just holds onto the cold, traps it, radiates it back at you all night long like some kind of medieval refrigerator. You could have a roaring fire going in the Great Hall and step 20 feet away, 20 feet, and you're right back to freezing. And the condensation. God, the condensation. Warm air from your breath, from the fire, from the bodies packed into these chambers, it rises up and hits those ice-cold stone walls and just weeps. Actual water running down the interior walls. Some mornings you wake up and there's moss growing on the stones inside your bedroom. Inside. You're basically living in a cave that someone had the audacity to call architecture. The windows make it worse. You know what medieval glass was? Fantasy for the very rich. Most castles had shutters. Wooden shutters. And maybe, if you were lucky, some oiled cloth stretched across the opening to let in a bit of murky light. But that cloth? It flaps. It tears. It does absolutely nothing to stop the wind that screams through those arrow slits like the castle itself is howling. Stand near a window and you feel the draft like a knife. The air moves through these fortresses in rivers of cold that never stop flowing. Here's the twisted irony nobody talks about. Down in the village, in those humble timber cottages with their thatched roofs and wattle and daub walls, those peasants are warmer than you. Way warmer. Their houses are small enough that a single hearth can actually heat the space. The thatch insulates. The timber holds heat better than stone ever could. But you're a lord or lady in your magnificent stone tower, and you're going to freeze to death in the same fortress that was supposed to protect you. You wake up one January morning in 1684 and something looks wrong. The walls are glittering. You blink, try to focus in the dim light, and then you realize there is frost forming on the interior walls of your bedchamber. Little crystals of ice creeping across the stone like some kind of beautiful, terrible artwork. Your breath clouds thick in front of your face. And in that moment you understand, this winter isn't playing by the old rules anymore. So you're standing there in your freezing chamber, frost on the walls, and you look at your bed. Not as furniture, as a machine. Because that's what it actually is, medieval engineering designed for one purpose: keep you alive until morning. First thing you notice? It's high. Like really high. Your bed stands nearly chest height off the floor, and that's not some weird design choice or status symbol. It's physics. Cold air sinks. Boys. The coldest layer in any room is at ground level, and if you sleep down there you're basically bedding down in an ice bath. So they built beds up. Way up. Climbing into bed wasn't just getting ready to sleep, it was literally elevating yourself out of the kill zone. But here's where it gets genius. Those 4 posts rising from each corner? They're not decoration. They're scaffolding for the real technology, the canopy and curtains. Heavy wool or linen curtains that drop down on all 4 sides, creating a tent, a microclimate, a fortress within the fortress. You draw those curtains closed and suddenly you're in a different world. The draft stops. Your own body heat, plus the heat from whoever or whatever else you've got in there with you, it stays trapped. The temperature inside those curtains can be 10, 15 degrees warmer than the room outside. Listen to that moment when you pull the last curtain shut. That heavy fabric sliding across the rod. The muffled whump as it falls into place. The sudden dampening of sound. The wind that was howling through the chamber just stops. Not completely, but enough. Enough that your shoulders drop. Enough that you can finally exhale without watching your breath turn to fog. And get this, nobles traveled with these beds. I'm serious. They dismantled the whole thing, loaded it onto carts, and hauled it from castle to castle because sleeping without your bed meant sleeping without your survival pod. There are records of royal progressions where the bed wagons were guarded more carefully than the gold. Because what's gold worth if you freeze to death in some drafty guest chamber that doesn't have proper curtains? Now, what you're sleeping on matters too. Straw tick if you're just getting by, basically a sack stuffed with straw, and yeah, it rustles every time you move, and yeah, it goes flat by February, but it's something between you and the wooden slats. If you've got money though, feathers. You sink into it. The mattress itself becomes insulation, cradling your body in trapped warmth. But here's the thing. Even with the feather bed, even with the curtains drawn tight, you're still cold. Your face is cold. The air you breathe is cold. It's just survivable cold now instead of deadly cold. You lie there in your cocoon, blankets piled so high you can barely move, and you feel, maybe for the first time since October, safe. That's the moment. When the curtains close. When the tiny space becomes yours. When the enormous hostile castle shrinks down to just this. Your body, your bed, your private atmosphere. It's not comfort, but it's enough. For now, it's enough. The blankets aren't blankets. They're armor. Literal, physical armor against an enemy that never sleeps and never retreats. You start counting the layers and lose track around 7 or 8 because at some point it stops being individual pieces and starts being a system. Bottom layer, linen. Always linen next to skin because wool will make you itch yourself bloody by morning. The linen is thin, almost delicate, but it's smooth and it wicks away the sweat. Yes, sweat. Even in a freezing chamber you sweat under all this, because your body's working overtime just to stay alive. Then the wool. Oh God, the wool. Heavy woolen blankets that smell like lanolin and sheep and smoke from 100 nights by the fire. Each one weighs what feels like 20 pounds. You layer them, 1, 2, 3, 4, each one trapping a bit more air, creating pockets of warmth. The scratch of it against your linen shift is constant. All night long you feel it, rough and real, reminding you that you're wrapped in something that used to be on a living animal. Something that kept it warm through winters just like this. And if you've got real money? Not as decoration, as survival equipment. Sable, fox, bear if you could get it. Those pelts trap heat like nothing else. A fur coverlet laid over everything else, and suddenly you're not just warm, you're hot. Chronicles talk about nobles who had so many furs piled on their beds they couldn't roll over. Couldn't even shift position without a servant helping them. Pinned down by luxury that doubled as life support. But the textiles aren't just on the bed. Look at the walls. Those massive tapestries, the ones showing hunting scenes and biblical stories and courtly love, they're not art. I mean they are, but that's secondary. They're insulation. Wool woven so thick and hung so close to the stone that they create a buffer zone. An air gap between you and the cold radiating off those walls. Some households had tapestries they only hung in winter, packed them away come spring. Functional textiles dressed up as decorations so nobody had to admit how desperately they needed them. You even sleep in layers. Night shift, long linen tunic down to your ankles. Then maybe a wool tunic over that if it's really bad. Thick wool stockings. A nightcap, always a nightcap, because your body loses most of its heat through your head and you can't afford to waste a single degree. Some nights you wrap cloth around your feet like bandages. Around your hands. You look ridiculous. You look like you're already dressed for burial. But you're warm. The moment comes when you're finally in bed, curtains drawn, and someone, a servant, a spouse, maybe you're doing it yourself, pulls that last fur coverlet up over everything. The weight settles on you like a physical force. You try to move and you can't. Not really. Your arms are pinned. Your legs trapped. You're swaddled so completely you might as well be an infant. And you know what? You don't care. Because for the first time in hours, maybe days, you're not shivering. The fire in the great hall is massive. I'm talking logs the size of your torso, flames leaping 6 feet high, heat so intense you can't stand within 10 feet of it without your face burning. And 20 feet away? You're freezing. 30 feet and you might as well be outside. Here's the cruel joke about medieval fireplaces. They're too big. These cavernous chimneys, wide enough to stand in, and they suck all the heat straight up and out. The draft is insane. You feed these monsters entire trees and most of that energy just vanishes into the sky while you stand there watching your breath fog. The hearth creates this brutal zone of extremes. Your front roasting, your back freezing, turning like a rotisserie chicken just to keep blood flowing to all your extremities. And the smoke. The smoke. Even with a chimney, the stuff doesn't all go up. It curls back down when the wind shifts, fills the hall with this gray haze that makes your eyes water and your throat close. You cough all winter. Everyone coughs. That deep, wet hack that sounds like you're dying because maybe you are, just slowly, one smoky breath at a time. Your clothes reek of it. Your hair. Your skin. Everything smells like wood smoke and ash, and you stop noticing after a while because there's no other option. But in your chamber? If you even have a fireplace, it's small. Pathetic, really. Burns through it fast and gives back barely any warmth. So you ration it. Bank the coals at night and pray they last until morning because if they die, if they go completely cold, you've got a problem. Middle of the night, maybe 2 or 3 in the morning, you hear it. That subtle shift in sound. The fire's dying. Someone has to get up. Someone always has to get up. You throw back those heavy blankets, instant regret, the cold slaps you like a physical blow, and stumble across the stone floor in the dark. Your feet scream. The embers are barely glowing now, sad little red eyes in the ash. You blow on them, add kindling, pray it catches. Your hands shake. Not just from cold but from the very real fear that this time it won't light. That you'll lose the fire completely. Before bed, if you're smart, you've got warming pans. Long-handled brass pans filled with hot coals that servants slide between your sheets. The sheets actually steam when the pan touches them. For maybe 20 minutes, your bed is gloriously warm. Then the coals cool and you're left with just the memory of heat and a faint smell of scorched linen. Even candles become heaters. Not much, but something. You cluster them near the bed, 3 or 4 burning at once, and that tiny bit of flame makes a difference. Creates this little radius of slightly less cold air. It's pathetic and desperate and absolutely necessary. Your face is always hot. Your back is always frozen. There is no comfortable middle ground. You're just constantly negotiating with fire. Feed it, tend it, worship it, fear it, need it so badly you'd burn your grandfather's chair if it meant another hour of warmth. You don't sleep alone. Can't afford to. I don't mean emotionally, I mean thermodynamically. A single human body in a freezing chamber is a losing battle. 2 bodies? Now you've got a chance. 3 or more and you might actually make it through the night without frostbite. So the bed fills up. Your spouse, obviously. But also, and this is where it gets weird by modern standards, servants. A lady's maid sleeping at the foot of the bed. A page curled up on a pallet so close you can hear every breath. Not for service, not for propriety. For heat. Because their bodies are furnaces and you need every BTU you can get. The social hierarchy that's so rigid during the day, it melts at night. Literally. You've got nobles and servants pressed together under the same furs because body temperature doesn't care about bloodlines. There are records, actual documented cases, of lords inviting trusted retainers into their bedchambers during the worst cold snaps. Not scandalous. Survival. The alternative was waking up dead. And then there's the dogs. And the dogs. Big ones, preferably. Mastiffs, hunting hounds, anything with mass and fur. They jump up on the bed and sprawl across your feet, your legs, sometimes right across your chest. They're warm. They're so warm. A couple of good-sized dogs and suddenly your feet, those extremities that were going numb, that were starting to hurt with that deep ache that means tissue damage, they're okay. The dogs breathe, they shift, they radiate heat like living furnaces wrapped in fur. There's this phrase that comes later, 3-dog night. Means it was so cold you needed 3 dogs in bed just to survive. And yeah, they smell. Yeah, they've got fleas. Yeah, they take up space and kick in their sleep. You deal with it. Because the alternative is losing toes to frostbite or just not waking up at all. In monasteries, it's even more extreme. Dormitories packed with monks sleeping in rows, beds so close you could reach out and touch your neighbor. The communal body heat turns the space into something almost livable. Alone in your cell? You'd freeze. But pressed together like sardines, breathing the same recycled air, listening to 30 other men snore and cough and pray in their sleep? You survive. Travelers have it worst and best at the same time. You stumble into an inn on a winter night and the innkeeper shows you to a room with 1 bed. A bed you're sharing with 3 strangers. Complete strangers. You've never met these people. Don't know their names. Don't care. You pile in back to back to back, and the warmth of 4 bodies under 1 set of blankets is the difference between making it to morning or not. You lie there in the dark, feeling someone else's breathing sync with yours. The dog at your feet twitches, dreaming. A servant shifts on their pallet. And the intimacy is unbearable and essential all at once. You're alive because you're not alone. It's that simple. That strange. That utterly necessary. Before you even think about getting into bed, you eat. Not because you're hungry, though you probably are, but because food is fuel in the most literal sense. Your body is a furnace and you're about to ask it to burn all night long in sub-zero conditions. So you feed it. Pottage. Always pottage. This thick, heavy stew that sits in your stomach like a warm stone. Barley, peas, turnips, onions, maybe some meat if you're lucky or it's a feast day. The stuff is almost solid by the time it's done cooking, simmered for hours until it's more mortar than soup. You eat it scalding hot, hot enough to burn your tongue, and you feel it travel down your throat, settle in your gut, and start radiating warmth from the inside out. That warmth lasts. I'm talking hours. You go to bed with your belly full of hot pottage and 2 hours later you can still feel it, this core of heat in your center that your body's pulling from. It's not enough on its own, but combined with everything else, the blankets, the bed curtains, the bodies pressed close, it tips the balance toward survival. And the drinks. The drinks. Mulled wine is basically medieval medicine. You take wine, which already warms you, and you heat it with cinnamon, cloves, ginger, nutmeg. Spices that cost a fortune, that traveled thousands of miles, and you're burning them in a cup because it works. That first sip hits your tongue sweet and sharp and almost painfully hot. You swallow and feel it bloom in your chest, spreading tendrils of warmth through your torso, down your arms. For a few precious minutes you're not cold at all. Heated ale for those who can't afford wine. Same principle, less glamorous. They warm it by the fire, sometimes drop in a hot iron poker to bring it to temperature. Tastes like warm bread and makes you sleepy and fills your belly with liquid heat. You down a cup, maybe two, right before bed. Between the alcohol and the temperature, you're drowsy and warm and suddenly the freezing chamber doesn't seem quite so hostile. The physicians of the time have theories, of course. The four humors, the balance of hot and cold, wet and dry. They say cold is wet and phlegmatic, so you need hot and dry foods to balance it. Garlic, pepper, ginger. Whether the theory's right or not, the practice works. People chew raw garlic before bed, swearing it keeps the cold from settling in their bones. Maybe it's the sulfur compounds improving circulation. Maybe it's placebo. Maybe it doesn't matter because they wake up alive. You drain the last of your wine, feel it settle warm in your belly, and climb into bed. The sensation is almost indescribable, this glow spreading outward from your core. Your cheeks flush. Your fingers tingle. For the first time since the sun went down, you feel something other than the endless gnaw of cold. It won't last all night. Nothing does. But right now, in this moment, your body is a furnace. You fed the fire. And maybe, just maybe, it'll burn until dawn. You kneel by the bed, even though your knees scream against the cold stone, and you pray. Not just because you're devout. Because the night is dangerous in ways that have nothing to do with temperature. Or maybe everything to do with it, depending on who you ask. Pater noster, quies in caelus. The words come automatic, muscle memory, and your breath clouds in front of your face with each syllable. 3 times through. Some nights 5. The ritual matters as much as the prayer itself. This thing you do every single night, this pattern that says I'm still here, still fighting, still faithful. It's a psychological anchor in a season that's trying to break you. Above the bed, hanging from the canopy frame, there's a sprig of juniper. Rosemary sometimes. Rue if you can get it. The smell is sharp, medicinal, cuts through the heavy odor of wool and smoke. But it's not about the scent. These herbs ward off evil. Keep the night air from poisoning you. Protect against the spirits that walk when honest people sleep. You don't question it. Everyone does it. Your grandmother did it. Her grandmother before that. Under your pillow, tucked where your hand can find it in the dark, there's iron. A small knife, maybe. Or just a nail. Cold iron. Because iron stops things. Stops fairies from stealing your breath. stops demons from sitting on your chest, stops the night hag who suffocates sleepers. The metal is freezing to touch, but somehow that makes it feel more powerful, more real. Is any of this real? Does it work? Here's the thing, it doesn't matter. Because when you're lying in the dark and the wind is howling through arrow slits and you can hear timbers creaking under the weight of ice, when you're so cold you're not sure you'll wake up, belief is survival. The ritual gives you control. The charm gives you agency. The prayer gives you hope. There's a folk belief that if you turn your shoes upside down before bed, frost can't bite your toes. Ridiculous, right? Except, you do it anyway. Because what if it helps? What if there's something to the old ways, the things your ancestors figured out through centuries of surviving winters just like this one? You whisper the names of 3 saints, your favorites, your protectors, and cross yourself one final time. The motion is so practiced you could do it in your sleep. Maybe you have. And here's the weird thing. You feel better. Actually better. Your shoulders drop. Your breathing slows. The knot of fear in your chest loosens just a fraction. It's not the juniper keeping you safe. It's not the iron stopping evil spirits. It's the doing of it. The routine. The refusal to go quietly into a night that wants you dead. You've armed yourself, not with steel, but with ritual. And in a world where you can't control the weather, can't stop the cold, can't make the sun rise any faster, these small acts of defiance are everything. You climb into bed. Your hand brushes the iron under your pillow. You smell rosemary. And somehow, impossibly, you feel protected. Here's the part that'll mess with your head. The lord in his castle tower is colder than the peasant in his cottage. Way colder. And everybody knows it even if nobody says it out loud. Think about it. The peasant's got 1 room. Maybe 2 if he's doing well. Timber frame, wattle and daub walls, thatched roof packed thick with straw. 1 hearth right in the center, and that fire? It heats everything. The whole family sleeps in the same space. Parents, kids, grandparents, sometimes a pig or chickens in the corner for extra body heat, and because, hey, livestock is valuable and you're not letting it freeze. The smoke has nowhere to go, so it just hangs there, choking and gross, but it's warm. Genuinely warm. Meanwhile, up in the castle, Lord whoever is shivering in a chamber the size of a small church. Stone walls on all sides. Vaulted ceiling that lets heat rise and disappear. 1 fireplace trying to heat 2,000 cubic feet of space and failing miserably. He's got tapestries, sure. Fur coverlets, feather beds, all the expensive survival gear money can buy. And he's still freezing his noble ass off. The irony isn't lost on visitors. You read their letters and they're always shocked, at how cold the fancy accommodations are. Slept in a peasant's hut last night, 1 merchant writes, and was warmer than in the baron's guest chamber. It's almost funny, except it's also kind of tragic. All that wealth, all that stone and ceremony and status, and it can't buy you the one thing that matters in January, warmth. But here's where it gets darker. The vulnerable pay the highest price no matter where they are. Children sleeping in drafty castle nurseries, their small bodies unable to generate enough heat. The elderly in both cottage and keep, their circulation failing, extremities going numb and staying numb. Parish records from the Great Freeze are brutal. You see the entries. Child, age 4, found frozen. Widow, age 68, dead in sleep. The cold doesn't care about your last name or your title. Some noble families get smart about it. They migrate within their own castles as the season changes. Summer chambers on the south side, catching sun. Winter chambers tucked into interior walls, smaller, easier to heat. They're basically nomads in their own homes, following warmth room to room. And the really desperate ones? They move to the kitchens. Sleep in rooms adjacent to the ovens where servants work. Abandon the staterooms entirely because pride doesn't keep you alive. Travelers see it all. They sleep in great halls and peasant cottages and monastery cells and roadside inns, and they keep notes. The consensus? Small and crowded beats grand and empty every single time. One German pilgrim writes that he preferred the stable to the solar because at least the horses were warm. So yeah, the peasant won this round. His poverty, his cramped quarters, his lack of grand architecture, it all accidentally added up to better thermal efficiency. The Lord's fortress protected him from armies but not from winter. And on a February night in 1684, when both of them are trying not to freeze to death, that peasant in his smoky little hovel is sleeping sounder than any noble in Europe. Not everyone made it. We need to talk about that before we talk about anything else. There's a chronicle from a Flemish castle, February 1684, describing guards found at their posts at dawn. Still standing. Spears still gripped. Frozen solid where they stood. The watchfire had gone out sometime in the night and they'd just stopped. The chronicler writes it matter-of-factly, like he's recording the weather. 3 men lost to frost on the north wall. That's it. That's the whole entry. Parish records are worse. You flip through them and it's just names and dates. Children mostly. Infant, unnamed, froze in the night. Boy, 6 years, could not be woken. The elderly. The sick. The ones whose bodies were already struggling. The cold found them and that was that. Some historians estimate hundreds of thousands dead across Europe that winter. Maybe more. The records are incomplete because in a lot of places, people stopped writing things down. Too busy surviving. Too busy burying their dead in ground so frozen they had to wait for spring to dig proper graves. And the ones who survived? They carried the cost in their bodies. Frostbite took fingers, toes, sometimes whole limbs. Respiratory illness from months of breathing smoke and cold air, that chronic cough that never fully leaves. Chilblains that flare up every winter for the rest of your life. The Great Freeze marked people. You could tell who'd lived through it by looking at their hands, listening to them breathe. But here's the thing. Here's the part that matters. Morning always came. Every single night of that endless winter, people went to sleep not knowing if they'd wake up. And every morning most of them did. They opened their eyes in the gray dawn light, felt the ache in their joints and the burn in their lungs, and thought, I'm still here. That moment, that daily small victory, it accumulated. Day after day, night after night, until finally, late February brought the first thaw. The hearth became more than a fire. It became a symbol. Every family that kept their fire alive through the winter, that tended it in shifts, that fed it furniture and books and anything that would burn, they weren't just staying warm. They were refusing to surrender. The flame was defiance. As long as it burned, they hadn't lost. And the resilience, God, the resilience. These weren't superhumans. They were just people. Regular people facing something unprecedented and finding ways, improvising, adapting, sometimes just enduring, to make it through. They shared beds with strangers, burned their grandparents' chairs, ate their seed grain, moved underground, abandoned hierarchy, did whatever it took. You're lying in your bed right now, aren't you? The heating working silently in the background. You didn't have to check the firewood supply today. Didn't have to share your bed with 3 strangers and 2 dogs. Didn't have to pray that your children would wake up in the morning. That comfort you're feeling? It's built on the survival of people who endured the unendurable. They made it through the worst winter in 500 years with nothing but wool, fire, faith, and each other. And because they survived, because they refused to let that winter be the end of the story, you exist. Take a breath. Let it out slowly. Feel the warmth around you, earned by ancestors who fought for it in ways we can barely imagine. Rest now. Spring always comes. Eventually. So let yourself settle now. Really settle. Feel the mattress beneath you, not straw, not a wooden plank with a thin pad. Something soft. Something that holds you without judgment or discomfort. Feel the pillow cradling your head. No smoke smell. No damp wool. Your blankets, they're light, aren't they? Compared to those medieval layers. You're not pinned down. Not trapped under furs that weigh more than a child. You can move if you want to. Roll over. Stretch out. The freedom of it is something they would have marveled at. And the temperature. Just notice it. The air around you is consistent. No drafts slicing through arrow slits. No frost creeping across interior walls. No desperate calculations about whether the fire will last until morning. Someone, or something, is quietly, invisibly keeping you at exactly the right temperature. Magic they couldn't have dreamed of. Breathe in slowly through your nose. Hold it for a moment. Let it out through your mouth. You don't see your breath fog in front of your face. Think about that. The air you're breathing right now is warm, comfortable. You're not rationing your breaths to avoid losing heat. You're not sleeping with a cloth wrapped around your face to warm the air before it hits your lungs. Breathe in. Breathe out. Your feet are warm. When's the last time you even thought about that? Your toes, all 10 of them intact, healthy, are just fine. No dogs needed. No heated stones. No desperate prayers that circulation keeps flowing through the night. Let your shoulders drop. All that tension you're carrying. Let it go. Soften your jaw. Unclench your hands. The darkness around you isn't threatening. It's just peaceful. There are no spirits to ward off. No iron needed under your pillow. No herbs hanging above your bed. The night is just the night. And you're safe in it. Breathe in and out. Those medieval sleepers, the ones who made it through, they'd be so proud of you. Not because you've done anything heroic, but because you exist. Because their survival echoes forward through centuries and landed here, in you, in this moment. You carry their resilience in your DNA. Their refusal to give up. And now you get to do something they fought so hard for. Something they endured so much to achieve. You get to sleep. Easily. Safely. Warmly. So close your eyes if they're not already closed. Feel the weight of your body sinking deeper into comfort. Every breath slower than the last. Spring always comes. But for now, just rest. You've earned it. They earned it for you. Sleep well.